Welcome. I'd really appreciate if you could drop a comment with your thoughts and reactions as you listen. Your feedback helps me craft better stories for you. Daniel scrolled through the latest articles on sustainable farming practices, taking notes for his next campaign speech. As an environmental activist for over a decade, his passion had only grown stronger with each new threat to the planet. Yet lately, even victories felt hollow. No matter how many petitions he organized or protests staged, the damage to the natural world seemed to accelerate regardless. Perhaps more drastic action was needed to wake people up. A pop-up had caught his eye. Uncensored eco-discussions. Join the resistance. Curiosity getting the better of him. Daniel clicked. The DarkWeb forum loaded slowly, encrypted protections obscuring its true purpose. Scanning the first post titles sent a chill down his spine. When will moderates accept radical solutions? A definitive case for eco-terrorism. Daniel had heard rumors of such groups, but never encountered one directly until now. As he delved deeper, one thread stood out: plans for a massive chemical spill into a major waterway, timed to coincide with next week's climate summit. The goal was to cripple the region's water supply and force the issue onto the global agenda. Though disturbed, Daniel couldn't turn away. If he reported it anonymously, the attack may still occur. But infiltrating under a fake profile offered a chance to stop it directly. EcoWatch 12 was born. Over the next few days, Daniel lurked silently in forums, absorbing the radical philosophies and tracing key members' online patterns. Most posts originated from IP addresses within the Pacific Northwest region near the Columbia River. Exchanging sparse private messages, he deduced the group called themselves EcoThreat and followed a ruthless doctrine: any means justified defending the planet. Their leader, known only as Winter Soldier 86, remained the most enigmatic. As the planned spill date approached, Daniel knew he must take action, but directly engaging carried risks of exposing his monitoring. Going to authorities offered little proof beyond vague internet discussions. He had to find a way to stop the threat without compromising his cover or mission. The clock was ticking towards an environmental catastrophe. Daniel steeled his resolve to dig deeper into EcoThreat's network, gain their trust, and uncover the plot before it was too late. The fate of the Columbia River and countless lives now rested on his covert infiltration of a radical group who believed some lines should never be crossed, even for protecting the environment. The next morning, Daniel logged onto the EcoThreat forum with renewed purpose. Scanning recent posts, he noticed another member, Timberwolf12, actively recruiting for the chemical spill. Sending a private message, Daniel introduced himself as a disillusioned activist from Seattle, expressing support for drastic measures. To his surprise, Timberwolf12 responded warmly, inviting further discussion. Over the next few days, the two exchanged messages sporadically to avoid suspicion. Posing thoughtful questions, Daniel learned the chemicals stockpiled were highly toxic industrial waste. The target spill point was a remote section of the Columbia upstream from Portland. Pretending reluctance, Daniel questioned the plan's viability. To his relief, Timberwolf12 took the bait, providing more details to reassure him. 5 barrels worth timed for peak water flow to spread contamination further. Though grateful for the intel, Daniel sensed his new acquaintance growing wary of probing queries. Their last message was brief, cutting off contact abruptly with a warning. The cause came before any doubts. Fearing he had pushed too far too fast, Daniel realized more was at stake than the river now. If exposed, he risked endangering future investigations or worse, his life. It was time to take a greater gamble for the sake of stopping the threat permanently. Scouring old forum posts, Daniel found numerous references to the enigmatic Winter Soldier 86 and admiration of his leadership. Composing a message carefully, he introduced himself as a veteran environmentalist driven to more extreme action, after years of compromise. Offering to help directly with the chemical spill, Daniel pleaded for a chance to prove his loyalty in person. Hitting send, he held his breath, hoping desperation hadn't overwhelmed caution. To his surprise, a response arrived within minutes. Winter Soldier 80. 6 remained distrustful, but agreed to a remote meeting the next day, alone, to assess Daniel's sincerity and skills. Coordinates led to a secluded hiking trail in Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. Daniel steeled his nerves, unsure what to expect from this shadowy figure leading EcoThreat. Arriving at the rendezvous point, Daniel paused, taking in the lush surroundings. Towering Douglas firs blocked the setting sun, casting the forest in an eerie twilight. Somewhere out there, a man waited who held the fate of the Columbia River in his hands. A sudden crack of twigs made Daniel spin around, hand instinctively reaching for a hidden recording device. From the shadows emerged a lean, bearded man in hiking gear, eyes piercing with intensity. "EcoWatch 12. We meet at last," the man said, voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of steel. This must be Alex Winters, the infamous Winter Soldier 86. Daniel steeled himself for the confrontation, knowing one wrong move could destroy his mission or endanger lives. The future of the river, and his own, now hung in the balance of this tense first meeting with the leader of EcoThreat. The glow of Michael's laptop screen cast shadows across his furrowed brow as he typed, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. Late into the night, Lisa rolled over in their bed, blinking awake to the familiar blue light eating from his makeshift home office. She glanced at the clock. 2:37 Sighing, she slipped out of bed and padded down the hall, pulling her robe tight against the chill. At the office door, she paused to watch him work, the way he always did when inspiration struck with a new coding project. But something felt different this time. When she knocked softly, he jumped as if startled. "Lisa, what are you doing up?" "I could ask you the same thing." "Come to bed. It's late." Michael closed the laptop screen a fraction too quickly. "Just finishing up. Be there soon. I promise." Unease curled in Lisa's gut, though she couldn't say why. With a nod, she returned to bed, but sleep eluded her, Michael's strange behavior replaying in her mind. The next morning, she rose early to find him already gone, the laptop missing from its usual spot. An idea took hold, one she knew was an invasion but couldn't ignore. Slipping into his office, she booted the laptop and entered his password on the first try, a subtle sting at the lack of trust between them. His browser history yielded nothing out of the ordinary, just coding forums and tech articles. But a folder tucked deep in his files caught her eye. Encrypted, password protected. Her heart raced as she ran cracking tools, each failed attempt chipping away at her hope. This was all in her head. Then, with a ding, the folder sprang open to reveal a trove of encrypted messages, funds transfers to anonymous accounts, references to places on the dark web she didn't understand. A chill ran through her that had nothing to do with the morning air. She knew she should close the folder, forget she ever saw it, but her curiosity was piqued. Opening one of the encrypted chats, she found messages signed only with an alias, Viper. The cryptic discussions centered around deception and profit, plans to exploit loopholes for personal gain. An idea began taking shape in her mind, one she hoped was wrong. That evening, Michael arrived home with flowers and apologies for his absence. But Lisa could only force a smile as her thoughts raced. After dinner, she retreated to her home office under the guise of work while her real investigation began in secret. Pulling up the dark web browser she kept only for research, she navigated to its hidden forums and marketplaces, the illicit underbelly of the internet coming alive on her screen. It took hours, but she eventually traced Viper's activities to a hidden forum called Shadow Pact, requiring additional login credentials to access. Her pulse quickened as she registered a new anonymous profile, hoping this wasn't a mistake. The forum loaded, sparse and nondescript like the others, but a familiar username caught her eye. Viper was online. Heart in her throat, she watched his posts discussing plans for a new project, references to someone called Only the Partner. Her suspicions grew until, with a shaky mouse, hover, she saw it. The profile photo was unmistakably Michael, taken on their vacation last year, his smile carefree and unaware. A sob rose in her chest, though no tears came as shock and disbelief warred within. This couldn't be real, some cruel trick, yet the evidence was damning. Her husband, the man she loved and trusted, was living a double life under an alias in Shadowpack's concealed world. And from his discussions, whatever he planned wasn't good. She knew then she had to see it for herself, no matter the cost. Under a new anonymous profile, she began gaining members' trust, learning their lingo, blending in as an observer. Their discussions only confirmed her fears. Plans to exploit loopholes, deceive partners, profit from others' losses. She watched in growing horror, realizing the true nature of those who lurked in darkness. Most chilling was Viper, coordinating it all from the shadows. His cunning and ambition were evident in his charismatic posts. Lisa began to understand the man behind the alias was nothing like the loving husband she thought she knew. Had it all been an act to hide his true self? How well did she really know Michael at all? Doubt consumed her as she logged off in a daze, questions swirling through the night. Come morning, she knew only one thing for certain. She had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The next few days passed in a blur for Lisa as she balanced her investigation with normal life. By day, she went through the motions: work, errands, casual conversations with Michael over dinner. But her mind was always elsewhere, analyzing every word and action for clues. At night, she delved back into Shadowpact under her new alias, gaining members' trust. Their discussions hinted at illegal schemes and exploiting others in troubling ways. She began to understand Viper's cunning plans, went deeper than simple deception for profit. Her doubts about Michael grew with each new revelation. Small cracks had begun to show in his facade at home. Short tempers, vague answers to her questions, prolonged absences claiming work demands. Lisa wondered how much was really due to stress and how much he was hiding even now. One evening, she returned from a late meeting to find Michael pacing in the kitchen, phone clutched tight as he argued in hushed tones. At the sound of her entrance, he ended the call abruptly and turned to greet her with a tense smile. "Everything okay?" she asked, but he waved it off, changing the subject. Later that night, as they lay in bed, Lisa watched Michael's silhouette in the dark, his steady breathing belying the turmoil within. She replayed their conversation again. Had he seemed nervous, evasive? Small tells that meant nothing alone but added to her growing pile of suspicions. Sleep evaded her as doubts consumed her thoughts. She needed answers, and there was only one place left to find them. Slipping from bed, she booted her laptop and logged back into Shadowpact, scanning the latest posts for clues. Viper was online, in a private chat with another user she didn't recognize. Her heart raced as she requested to join, hoping for some insight into his plans. After a pause, approval came through and the messages flooded her screen. She gasped. They were openly discussing exploiting loopholes in a new partnership contract, ways to manipulate the terms for maximum profit, without the other party realizing until it was too late. A sick feeling rose in her gut at the callous disregard for someone they referred to only as the partner. This went beyond deception. It was outright betrayal. She thought of confronting Michael then and there, but knew it wouldn't be enough. She had to uncover irrefutable proof, see his plans in full before demanding answers. With a deep breath, she dove back into the conversation, prodding for more details under the guise of helpful suggestions. Information began flowing more freely, and a sinister picture emerged. Michael had been secretly altering the terms of the contract for weeks, obscuring key clauses to benefit himself at the expense of his unwitting business partner. The launch of their new project was only days away, at which point the trap would spring and Michael would reap the rewards of his deception while leaving the partner with nothing. Lisa reeled at the calculated betrayal, the ease with which Michael had lied not only to his partner but to her as well every day. She printed the chat logs, hands shaking as the final pieces clicked into place. This was no harmless online persona. Viper was Michael's true self, revealed at last. That morning, she confronted him in the kitchen with the evidence. "Explain this," she said, slamming the papers down between them. Michael paled but recovered quickly. "Where did you get these? You had no right." "Don't. I know the truth about Viper, about your plans and what you've been doing behind everyone's backs. How you lied to me, to your partner." "You don't understand," he snapped, eyes flashing with an emotion she didn't recognize. "This was my chance, my big break. I had to ensure it paid off. By betraying someone's trust, manipulating them for your own gain." Her voice rose in disbelief. "I thought I knew you, but you're a complete stranger." "Lisa, please," he pleaded, reaching for her, but she recoiled. "No more lies. Tell me the truth, all of it, or get out." A tense silence fell as they stared each other down, the gulf between them yawning ever wider. Finally, Michael spoke in a low voice. "The truth is, I did what I had to do. I saw an opportunity, and I took it. Consequences be damned. I thought you, of all people, would understand the lengths one must go to succeed in this world." His words confirmed her worst fears. The caring husband had been a mask for this ruthless man's ambition. Tears stung her eyes as the final pieces clicked into place. "You're right. I don't understand you at all." With that, she gathered her things and left, ignoring his shouts. Outside, the morning air did nothing to clear her head as she drove aimlessly. Replaying their argument, she knew returning wasn't an option, not until she sorted through the mess of lies and betrayal. Pulling over, she logged back into ShadowPact, scanning for any hint of what Michael might do next. To her surprise, Viper's account had been deleted, along with all traces of his plans. A sinking feeling took hold. He was covering his tracks, preparing for the fallout, but she was determined not to let him slip away so easily after what he'd done. Under her new alias, she sent messages to others who had interacted with Viper, probing for details on his identity or whereabouts in real life. To her relief, one user replied they had met in person once, exchanging contact info just in case. With shaking hands, Lisa requested the number, hoping this lead didn't also turn to smoke. Minutes later, a message dinged, an actual phone number. Her pulse raced as she saved it, knowing this could be her only chance at answers, or a dangerous misstep. Either way, there was no turning back now. She had willingly walked into the shadows seeking truth, and there would be consequences to face regardless. Steeling her nerves, Lisa dialed the number, unsure what lay on the other end, but knowing one thing for certain: she was in far deeper than she ever imagined. Sarah pulled up outside the modest suburban home and killed the engine of her sedan. She took a moment to gather her thoughts before stepping out into the late afternoon sun. Another missing persons case, she thought with a sigh. They were becoming all too common these days. She walked up the driveway and rang the doorbell, clutching her worn leather briefcase tightly. A frazzled-looking woman answered, her eyes red and puffy. "Mrs. Thompson's?" Sarah asked gently. The woman nodded. "I'm Sarah Clarke, the private investigator. May we speak inside?" Sarah took a seat in the living room as Mrs. Thompson fussed with a tray of tea things. "I know this is difficult, But could you tell me about Emily and the circumstances of her disappearance? Mrs. Thompson sat down heavily. Emily was a quiet girl, kept to herself a lot after her father passed. I worried she was lonely. Her voice caught 2 weeks ago. She said she was going out with a friend from an online group, but she never came home. Sarah made notes. Can you tell me about this online group? It was some sort of anonymous social network called IllusionNet or something like that. Emily spent a lot of time there in the last few months. Said it helped her feel less alone. Mrs. Thompson wiped her eyes. Do you think that's where something happened to her? It's the best lead we have so far, Sarah said gently. She pulled out her laptop and began researching IllusionNet. What she found unsettled her more than she cared to admit. The network operated entirely on the dark web, accessible only through encrypted browsers. Users took on pseudonyms and personas, their real identities completely obscured. Sarah scrolled through forums discussing manipulation tactics, psychological games, and worse. She shuddered to think of Emily exposed to such influences in her vulnerable state. That evening, logged into IllusionNet as Sleuth ID. 3. Sarah began cautiously poking around. The maze of forums and chat rooms seemed designed to disorient. She noticed a user called the Puppetmaster who left cryptic comments that seemed designed to elicit responses. His manipulation was subtle yet masterful. After several dead ends, Sarah received a private message. I see you watching, little mouse. Come to my parlor and I'll tell you what you want to know. She hesitated, then responded. What do you know about Emily Thompson? Moments later, all in good time. Sarah logged off unsettled, her sense of what was real beginning to blur around the edges. One thing was clear. This Puppetmaster held the key to Emily, but his games could be more dangerous than she knew. She was in deeper than she'd planned, and the puppet strings had only begun to tighten their grip. Sarah arrived at the abandoned warehouse right on time, yet she still felt late. The Puppetmaster's message had been chillingly precise. Midnight, the old mill on the outskirts. Come alone. She stepped out into the night, flashlight in hand, senses on high alert. The beam swept over crumbling walls covered in graffiti. A flutter of wings echoed in the rafters as she picked her way through the debris. A light up ahead flickered in the darkness. Sarah approached cautiously and found a laptop open on a rickety table, its glow casting eerie shadows. She leaned in to read the message on the screen. Welcome, little mouse. The game is afoot. Your first task is simple. Find the key. Sarah spun, flashlight probing the empty space. Where was the key? She searched frantically amid the junk and rubble. A glint of metal caught her eye. Was that it? She bent to inspect a rusted padlock hanging from a chain-link fence. As her fingers closed around it, a low chuckle sounded behind her. She whirled, heart pounding. A hooded figure emerged from the shadows. Well done. You've proven yourself an able player so far. His voice was smooth as silk, yet sent chills down her spine. Who are you? Sarah demanded, struggling to keep her voice steady. What do you want with me? With Emily? He tilted his head, regarding her with amusement. Names have power, little mouse. And I want only what we all desire, the thrill of the game. This isn't a game to me, Sarah snapped. An innocent girl is missing. Is she? Or is that part of the illusion? He stepped closer, and Sarah resisted the urge to back away. You seem so certain of realities that continue to shift like sand through my fingers. His words twisted in her mind, undermining her fragile grip on truth. She grasped at her purpose. Tell me where to find Emily and end this. The Puppetmaster laughed softly. But we've only just begun. Your next task awaits. He gestured to a doorway, where a faint blue light pulsed rhythmically. Sarah approached warily, flashlight probing the darkness. The room beyond was empty, save for a laptop open on a table, its screen displaying a simple message: make your choice. Below were 2 buttons labeled left and right. She turned to question the Puppetmaster, but found herself alone once more. His disembodied voice echoed eerily. Choose wisely, little mouse. One path leads to your prize. The other, who can say? Sarah hesitated, pulse racing. Was Emily's fate truly in her hands? Or was this another layer of the game, peeling back her sense of control? Only one way to find out. She reached out and pressed left. The screen flickered, then displayed a map with a location pinpointed. Had she really found Emily so easily? Sarah grabbed the laptop eagerly, but it went dark as her fingers closed around it. She tapped frantically at the keys to no avail. A low laugh sounded behind her. Well done. You've solved this riddle, but the game is far from over. Sarah spun to face the Puppetmaster. No more games. He tilted his head, regarding her with cold amusement. Demand all you like, little mouse, but you play by my rules, and I've only just begun to unwind your strings. With a swish of his cloak, he vanished once more into the shadows. Sarah was left alone with nothing but the echo of his laughter, and a growing sense she was no longer in control of her own fate. The game had only begun, and its master was toying with her like a cat with caught prey. She had to end this before the strings tightened further and she lost herself in the maze of illusions from which there was no escape.